With all this talk about AI and machine learning, recently I've been thinking about how would this affect how we read astrology charts for career profiling. And of course, if you've tinkered with anything recently like ChatGPT or image tools like Midjourney, video tools like Pictory, or if you even have tinkered with machine learning at all, then you would know that AI is not some distant future. It is here like now. And if AI hasn't really infiltrated your industry or your workplace yet, it's not because the technology doesn't exist, it's because the infrastructure takes a while to catch up. But this also means that as more and more people get quite concerned about this potential threat that's coming in, people are trying to get answers from leaders. And the leaders have been telling all of us that, well, don't worry. Like with every revolution, be it the printing press or electricity or internet, maybe some of the old jobs will be lost, but there will be new jobs that people can get on. But just take a moment and really think about this, right? Nowadays, you have bots that can produce images and music and footage. You also have bots that can produce grammatically correct sentences and to be able to automatically send out communications to inform people of things or to get problems fixed. Now, you also get bots who can take data input and to accurately assess it and then to produce advisory output. We've got AI that does that now. You even have AI that can analyze emotions 24/7. You've got AI moving into things like humanoid robots that can actually do physical activities. So even people like hairdressers and chefs, you could potentially be replaced by AI too. Now, in this particular landscape, it can be a bit hard for the average person, the average professional to wonder, okay, so there's going to be some new jobs, so where do I fit in? And that's a very legitimate concern. So what this means is that now in the past, when somebody comes to me and say, hey May, can you do an astrology profiling and check out like my career, what am I good at? So in the past, it was more about advising people on which industries to apply to, what kind of roles to take, or even if you were self-employed, it was about how to compete with other people or how to market yourself in a very noisy marketplace. But the problem right now with automation is that it changes the landscape because your competition is no longer another human being. And it's not as simple as you applying for a job because your competition isn't other human beings that's applying for the job. You're competing potentially with a machine that can do everything you do and everything that your colleagues in 5 other departments do. And they work 24/7 and they are free, apart from maybe some infrastructure investment. But where does a person really fit in? And so it got me really thinking about how we can help the next generation of workers in this new era. And today I'm going to present not one, but 5 things that you should really be focusing on in your astrology chart to be able to sort of generate a new vision for how you fit into the new workforce. Now, number 1 on my list is creativity. And I'm not really talking about the usual kind of creativity like drawing or writing songs because, AI is going to do all of that. But in fact, the real meaning of the word creativity is something that comes from within yourself. It is a self-expression. And the funny thing is that human creativity has never really been a product of logic. And that's what AI is good at. So what AI will do is that it draws from all the existing designs and music and ideas that already exist in the internet world. So basically, the AI can only work with things that are already present. And I know some people have mentioned that, yes, AI is going to start generating new content that we've never seen before. But you see, AI works with logic and usually with things that try to improve things. But let me show you how human creativity works very differently. Now, if you think about creative things like laksa recipes, dance moves, or interior design trends, but a lot of it didn't come from the fact that somebody sat down and said, okay, so logically we go from A to B and here's how we improve it. That's not how this works. Because if someone comes up with like a very crazy sort of laksa recipe and they decide to put pineapple into the laksa gravy, for example, it's not because of logic, because there's no logic behind that, but they might do it because pineapple is their favorite fruit. So in a moment of self-expression, they might actually discover that, hey, this tastes quite good and I've just created my own laksa recipe. So what I'm trying to get at here is that in astrology, right now, if I were to look into your astrology chart, what I'm looking for here is what is uniquely you. That is not something that we arrive at by logic, but it's just you being yourself. So if I and one of the cool things that we can do is to take two parts of yourself that doesn't really logically seem like they should sort of combine together. But if we did combine it, it would create something that's really new and creative, and it's very natural for yourself to embody. So an example could be if you're kind of funny, and if you're like a big and strong and you look like an action star, then you could combine humor and action together to create people like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. You could also create people like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And these things, you can't really replicate it. It's just them as people. So they have value just being themselves. Now, you could also have people who are very dreamy and they belong in some kind of like a fantasy world, but they're also very well-trained and skilled architects. And that's how you get famous architects like Gaudi. You've got people like Frank Gehry who have integrated their personal fantasies into architecture. And you also get people who write books. They can be very good at writing books, but also people who challenge the norm. It's like, why does a book have to be read from page 1 to page 100? What if we sort of jumped around? And that's how you can have people who create things like choose your own adventure books. I remember reading those when I was a kid, and that was very innovative. And it's clearly somebody decided to use a medium to challenge a norm. And even personally for myself, I've used this in my own chart. And while I'm pretty good at astrology, but also I'm a very practical person. I don't do like goddesses or like woo stuff, very down to earth, useful things. And I guess you can also, as a form of self-expression, I created practical astrology that actually people can use in their lives to make decisions. Now, the second thing is personal relationships. So, of course, we start talking about how AI is able to mimic human relationships. If you talk to ChatGPT, if you talk to them for too long, you might start to mistake them as being your, chatbot friend. There are lots of jokes being made right now about sex robots that can mimic human intimacy. And I suppose it's starting to become not that much of a joke anymore because it's becoming a reality. So, but the issue here is that most humans actually do want to connect with other humans. And despite a very skillful imitation that AI might be able to do, the reality is it doesn't replace the connection that one human being has with another. And so some of these reasons include the fact that you want to talk to somebody who have similar experiences, people who can relate to how you're feeling. And you know that AI can pretend, but they don't know what it feels like to be rejected by a parent. They don't know what it feels like to be embarrassed at school or to be bullied in the workplace. The AI is never going to know any of that. It cannot relate. And so this is another avenue in which most of us can actually look into. And that's why when we look into the astrology chart, then the astrologer will be helping you to sort of figure out who is your natural audience, who are the people that you can have that natural connection with, and also what kind of emotional connection are we talking about? Is this about you sitting with them and being in physical contact? Are you holding their hands? Are you the coach that shows up and sort of encourages them when they are competing in the Olympics? Or are we talking about somebody who is more of like an advisor, somebody that people want to talk to? Perhaps you're a mentor. It could be somebody who is just there to lend a pair of hands, right? So that it's not just working with a robot, but you want to be a firefighter and know that somebody is as passionate as you about saving lives. So this personal relationships can be a game changer, and it's one area in which AI can never compete with a human being. Now, the third item on my list is personal beliefs. So yes, the AI robot can be very good at telling you about events that's happening in the world or what causes people are fighting for, but these are just facts and figures. See, the reality is an AI robot can never truly feel strong feelings about things like human rights or about climate activism. They may never care about your Peranakan culture. They don't care about saving certain areas of the world. And these are things that humans care about. So this also is an extension of the fact that this is us just being us. You might care about Peranakan culture because your grandmother taught you the beauty of the culture. So, and also the AI also is lacking something known as a morality benchmark. So they don't necessarily feel that, okay, this is wrong, murder is wrong, or certain types of crimes are bad, or guns are bad. It doesn't have an opinion about anything. And so one way in which we can get in touch with what is fundamentally human is our need to feel that we are doing what is right and that there are causes that you want to fight for. So when an astrologer goes into your astrology chart, it could be very powerful to build a career around causes that you genuinely care about and things that you have passion to fight with people of the similar beliefs. Now, in fact, a lot of my clients and students are already giving feedback that currently in your jobs, it feels a bit like pointless robot work to begin with, because you may not actually care about the causes that your company is fighting for. But it also means that some people also discovered that the company doesn't have a cause that they're fighting for besides making money. So what I think is a great irony is that as the bots are happy to take over our pointless work, the good news, the silver lining here is that it leaves you free to be able to have the time and the energy to fight for those causes. So a good astrologer will be checking your chart for things like where your belief system lies, and to help clients sort of figure out what is happening in the world that you don't necessarily agree with, things that you feel are not right, and that if you had the time and the space, you would be happy to sort of try to change some things that are happening in the world. And this actually leads to passion and purpose, which is what so many people are already looking for anyway. The fourth item on my list is leadership. And I know we tend to think of leaders as being like rich or powerful people, but actually, if you look at history and some of the people who has gone down in history as being among the best leaders are not necessarily the people who were best at their jobs. So for example, I didn't think Genghis Khan was necessarily the best horseman in his kingdom. And probably Franklin Roosevelt was probably, not the richest man in the United States. And for sure, Lee Kuan Yew was probably not the best accountant or the best administrator in his administration. But this hasn't stopped millions of people being impacted by their leadership, and also to have them be in history and recorded not just as leaders because they were powerful, but leaders because people looked up to them and that people rallied around their vision. So if we think about leadership as being a person who's able to sort of articulate a vision of what is to come, and to have people understand it, and to also inspire people to sort of join them on a cause, then that's very unlikely to be something that AI can emulate. Now, on top of that, you find that quite often people want to look up to somebody and to feel like there are traits or there are achievements that they would like to also follow in somebody's footsteps or to emulate certain behaviors. And that's never going to happen with an AI, because nobody in their right mind is looking up to the AI and tell the AI, I want to be just like you. It makes no sense at all. So what this means is that when we look into an astrology chart and we're looking for something to do with leadership, now, it doesn't mean that you have to be a CEO or you have to be a director. Sometimes it happens in very small ways. So even if you are leading a small team, if you are being a mentor or like a team leader, even somebody who just steps up and decides that, okay, I'm going to volunteer to sort of head a program, or I've got some ideas that I want to share, then that is already leadership. Not everybody has to be the CEO. And so in an astrology chart, we're looking for things like, who are your people? Who are the people who want to follow you? And what is it about yourself? And in what areas you would like to sort of see changes? And where might you not mind putting your hand up and volunteering to be proactive and to take action? And then what this means, also you want to see what kind of role you can play to the people whom you are leading, whether it's an emotional leadership, if it's financial leadership, it could be action leadership. It comes in all different forms. And this also helps most of my students and my clients to figure out where you might want to chart your direction and who are the people you can benefit. Now, the last one is probably the hardest one to talk about, because it's the one thing that will make the biggest change to the workforce and how we think of work and careers in the future. And that means the last one on my list is entrepreneurship. And the reason is very simple, that getting a job will be very difficult in the future. Now, of course, right now, AI is not perfect and it's still kind of expensive to get into machine learning, doesn't really tick all the boxes. But we all know how quickly that technology can move. And what this means is that in the future, it's quite likely that people aren't going to get a job because for most corporations, it would be far cheaper and far more sensible to actually invest in a machine or to invest in technology that could potentially replace not just you, but possibly 100 people at a go. And it makes sense because then it's not a cost that will be incurred on a monthly basis. It's salary that they don't have to pay on a monthly basis. And this is going to be the reality in just about every industry that there is in the world. So what this means is that for many people, it's this sense that you will need to sort of create something that's new. And I know some of you will be thinking, but May, I thought you just mentioned like 4 other things that we can do. So aren't these careers that we can do, like places we can apply at, because we can still do stuff that the AI can't do? And so those things are creativity, personal relationships, your personal beliefs, and leadership. And here's where I have some pretty bad news for you, that with some few exceptions, most employers aren't looking for these 4 things. They're not looking for you to be self-creative. They don't necessarily want to pay you to build your personal relationship with people. And they most of the time, they're not really paying you to sort of fulfill your own beliefs. There are exceptions, but the vast majority of people aren't doing those things. At the very least, you're not standing up for your own beliefs. You're standing up for whatever beliefs the company wants you to stand up for. And so here's the irony is that it's not just happening in the future, but actually careers or jobs have never been about your self-expression. And they have never been about you expressing your opinions about what is right and what is wrong. In fact, in all these years, I've heard so many stories of people putting aside your own beliefs and your own morality benchmarks to do your job, to get paid. And so one of the things that is going to happen is that more and more people are going to realize that as jobs become untenable, that it actually makes more sense to actually create your own businesses. And so the weird thing is not really to have to wait until AI replaces you, because it's not like you're getting proper self-expression in most careers anyway. And so what this means is getting started early also means that when the big replacement comes, you're not going to panic. And it also means that right now, you aren't worried every time an employer talks about cutting costs. You're not panicking every time you hear rumors of a retrenchment exercise. And you're not worried so much about the fact that AI is going to replace, because you are already investing yourself into self-expression that is going to last you right into the new era. So what this means is that when we look into an astrology chart, now once you start coming from a freelance and an entrepreneurship perspective, the chart is your oyster, because now we are no longer thinking about how to squeeze a square peg into a round hole, but rather we're looking at what can you contribute, who are your people, what kind of messages would need to come out in your marketing, not necessarily just to get sales, but rather to communicate to people where you can help, and what is it that you believe in, who your people are, and what mediums you should be in. Are you the online kind? Are you the offline kind? Are you the type who deals with like people's personal lives, or rather in their public lives? And we all come in all shapes and sizes. And what this means is to have a career that is really you, and frankly, automation proof. Okay, so now that I'm going to end off, now if you have concerns about career, not so much about where you want to go apply for a job, I mean, I can help you with that, but it's not a long-term solution. But rather, if you are genuinely thinking about a long-term, how do you build something that fits into the new era, that doesn't necessarily involve you collecting a salary in the conventional way, then yes, you can explore getting an astrology consultation. I will be happy to sort of work with ideas that you already have, and to see if there are other blind spots that you haven't thought of and you can incorporate into your plans. But for everyone else who's very interested in this idea of self-discovery, perhaps you're not there yet and you're not really thinking about making a career change yet, but you are interested in getting to know your chart, and are there things that you could be really passionate about that you can start discovering and start taking actions on your own in a smaller way, so that you are not caught unawares when the great replacement shows up. So you'll find links at the bottom about how to get in touch with me, about consultations, and about courses where I teach you how to read your own chart.